lot of designer brands and things like that, but just good, substantial,
good quality clothes.
Quality clothes that would last and last. And I've been closed. The business has been closed since 1990, but I still have people come up and tell me that they have clothes that they can still wear from the store. So it did last. Good last. Good clothing.
You won't hear that from me. I'm probably about 60 pounds heavier than I was in high school.
Yeah, we all grow.
I was lucky if I weighed 155 when I graduated, probably. If I was lucky, 155 pounds.
But we had quite a few clothing stores in the area. Catherine Payne had Catherine's Dress Shop.
Yes.
You know, down off of the bypass there. And then Leona had a dress shop up here. That was Leona Cox. And George's men's store was her husband, and he had the menswear. And Bonnie Chandler had Cottons.
I forgot all about that, yeah. Yes.
And then there was a dress shop, and of course when Gallatin Square was one of the few places to shop, we had J.C. Penney, which was where I started working when I was in high school. My father said I need to get a job, and he was at that time Gallatin Dry Goods, which is where the People's Store was located.
Okay.
But he was working for Mr. Felix Woodard and James Patterson there, and it was a dry goods store. There was no ready-to-wear. Everything was materials, you know, and people would come in, buy the materials, and they'd make their dresses. And they did have men's clothing that was ready-to-wear. But most of the ladies' clothing was to be sewn, and women would come in and purchase their fabrics and so forth. And I remember taking inventory, trying to count the folds of fabric, you know, to determine how much fabric was left on the bolt.
Yeah.
And so forth.
I'm sure my mother probably spent a lot of her earnings over there, because she made all of my two older sisters, she made all of their clothes. And she was always buying patterns, and she was sewing something all the time. And she made a shirt for me and my brother. It's the first time she had tried to sew a shirt for, you know, boys. And she didn't have the right buttons for the collars, the button-down collar, and she had to use the regular buttons here for the collars. And they were huge. I mean, they just like stood out. I mean, probably nobody noticed, but we noticed it. We were like, oh man, we got to wear that to school. And, you know, we were embarrassed, and I don't think anybody ever even noticed anybody. Probably didn't care, but
sure.
We knew it because they were smaller buttons that go from the collar. But that was all she had. We made do with what she had, you know. And it was, you know, it was a Oxford cloth type shirt. I mean, nice shirt. And she did a good job, except those two buttons. Just didn't have the right size buttons.
You could get, you know, really good fabric at that time. And if a woman was a good seamstress, could really make some fine clothing as well as other things. But,
more about nothing.
Well, John Bradley had Bradley's office supply. It was Bradley's bookstore. At one time, it was on the south side of my store, and then later on, it was moved up to the north side. And they carried, well, they started out with all kinds of things. They had a second floor toy store. Remember the toys up on the second floor? Bradley's.
I remember at Newberry's, you know, on the toy land up there, right before Christmas.
And they also had a fountain, along with Duncan's fountain over on the east side of the square. And Mr. Bradley had a bakery that was backed by the Palace Theater on Franklin Street there. And he would bring his things up to the store and sell them at the fountain or right at the bakery, I'm sure, as well. But Mr. J.G. Bradley started that business, and he worked at one time for Mr. Roth in the theater business back when the Palace Theater was almost a silent movie house in his younger days. And my father worked at J.C. Penney for a number of years, and then left and went with Mr. Patterson and Felix Woodard at Gallatin Dry Goods. When they decided to close, then my father went with some fellows from Springfield and started the business, and at that time it was known as the Family Store for a few years, and then later became the People Store. And when my father and Judge Hamilton and Raymond McCullough decided to purchase all of the stock from the Springfield place. So it continued, but they had to change the name because there was a Family Store in Springfield as well.
Oh, okay.
But and then if you remember, the Chandlers had Chandler's clothing store on down on North Water, across from Buggy Implement Company.
I love that place.
And that was the Ramsey family.
Yeah, Mr. Ramsey, he was nice to me. He was very to the point, and he would come off, if you didn't know him at first, he'd come off kind of rough and abrasive, kind of not really abrasive, but just very direct to the point. But he helped me so much when I was trying to learn how to build stuff and looking for this or looking for that. And he could find anything. I mean, he could find anything in that store.
Well, that's it.
I loved going in there.
It was an institution in itself.
It was neat. I hated so much for that to go away.
Yeah.
And that was such a neat place.
And you could buy one nail, or you could buy a handful.
Yeah, whatever you needed.
Which today, everything's packed and different numbers and so forth. But no, he had a very interesting store, and it was heated with the potbelly stove up until he passed, and then the store was sold. That's where the furniture store is now. He's done a beautiful job of fixing that up. Gibson's thinking about. But a retail area like the square evolves over time and changes. And Gallatin Square has gone through some lean years when the patterns changed from the Saturday big day. Because I can remember when there was very little going on during the week, and the ladies in the store would bring their beans in and shell the beans while they were waiting for somebody to come in the door.
Yeah.
And be ready to go home and either can them or cook them when they got through. But on Saturdays, it was all business.
It was hopping.
And Fridays were also important days. Because
Payday.
That was when Genesco had their checks out for the week, and people had little money in their pocket, and so people would come in to purchase, and we always stayed open later on Saturdays and Friday nights. We'd open up on Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. and stay till 9 p.m.